Welcome to Mineral Talks Live, the monthly live mineral webinar that brings you in-depth and in-person interviews with mineral people from around the world. Mineral Talks Live is brought to you by a joint effort among the Mineralogical and Geological Museum at Harvard University, the SMMP, and Blue Cap Productions. Tune in on the first Wednesday of every month and stay connected to your mineral world. Now, broadcasting live from beautiful Honolulu, Hawaii, the land of aloha, ukuleles, and shakas, this is Mineral Talks Live.
Our warmest greetings to everyone around the world tuning into our program right now. Today is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, and welcome to a very special episode of Mineral Talks Live. To the Mineral Talks Live team, this episode is special because it's the 75th episode of an initiative we started almost exactly 3 years ago today when we first launched our program. Since then, we visited with people from all over the world performing all sorts of roles in the mineral community, and we've had some absolutely wonderful conversations. And while the success of the show has a lot to do with the guests who have appeared, we also wanted to send a message of extreme gratitude to you, our viewing audience, for tuning in time and time again. So thank you for your support and keep tuning in as we continue to interview some of the best curatrix, curators, collectors, dealers, miners, researchers, artists, and media people in the mineral world. If you're tuning in for the first time, I'm your host, Brian Swoboda, and along with the two best partners anyone can ask for, Dr. Raquel Alonso Perez from the Mineralogical and Geological Museum at Harvard University, and Dr. Eloise Gaillou from the Society of Mineral Museum Professionals, also known as the SMMP, we welcome you to our show. If you happen to have missed any of our interviews, there's a complete list to our 75 episodes, along with links to those interviews at the URL located at the bottom of the screen. Now, one of the things that makes this program unique is that not only is this a live show, but it's a show where you get to interact with our guests. All you have to do is participate through the chat or the Q&A features, both of which are located at the bottom of your Zoom window. The chat feature allows you to type messages to everyone watching the show. We encourage you to post your thoughts, comments, or questions about what we're discussing in this chat area while we're talking. Both Raquel and Eloise monitor the chat area and will be very active there. Occasionally, they'll even interject a question or comment to us in the interview that they've received from the chat area, so don't be shy. As for any general questions you may have for our guests, those questions can be typed into the Q&A section, and we'll get to those questions at the end of the show. Finally, towards the end of the program, you'll see a window pop up on your screen. This is our Quickfire 5 questions segment to see how well all of us know our guests. We find it's also a fun icebreaker when you run into our guest at the next mineral event. So for today's episode, we're headed back to our nation's capital for a revisit of the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. This time, we're going to go on a guided tour of the museum itself, and we are incredibly honored to have, as our tour guide, an amazing young woman who not only found her passion early, but dedicated her life to chasing that passion. She's a mineralogist, a geochemist, and a researcher who, among other things, studies how biomineralizing organisms, such as corals and mollusks, make minerals and how these minerals record shifting aquatic environments in their crystallography and chemistry. She's a longtime member of the Mineralogical Society of America, a board member of the SMMP, and is the first woman and the first person of Latin descent to become curator in charge of the National Gem and Mineral Collection at the Smithsonian. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to our show, Dr. Gabriela Farfan. Gabriella, how are you?
Hi. Sorry, I was
there
muted.
You are.
How are you, Brian?
I am doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm great. I'm coming to you from the museum, so things are wonderful.
Where are you? Are you in a lounge, or are you in your office, or where are you?
I am in my office, sitting on a couch where I have these mineral-themed pillows, as one must have if you're in the mineral world. But I'm going to show you some really special things today. Take you around behind the scenes of the Smithsonian.
Fantastic. Cannot wait for that. Now, Gabriella, this is our turn back the clock portion of the interview where I get to ask our guests how they got started in minerals. So what's your origin story of how you got into minerals?
So I first discovered that I loved minerals when I was about 6 years old. I was visiting a natural history museum, actually. I was in UW-Madison, in Madison, Wisconsin, and they have a geology museum that's free to the public. So we happened to be strolling down the road and saw this geology museum, and I walked in, and the first thing that really stood out to me was the mineral exhibit. And I stared at it long enough that the director at the time actually came up to me and he noticed that I was really, really excited about these minerals. And he actually gave me my first quartz crystal, and the rest is history. So I started collecting minerals. Yeah. So I joined the lapidary club, the local lapidary club. It's called the Madison Gem and Mineral Club. And I started actually collecting minerals and gems, both in person and, as my dad would say, digging with the credit card. So
that's excellent. Now, Gabriella, do you remember what mineral it was in the display, or what minerals in the display that grabbed your attention, or what was it about it that just captivated you?
So there was a specific specimen that I still remember of fluorite and sphalerite on matrix from Tennessee. And it's absolutely stunning because it's a beautiful cluster of sphalerite. It's actually the main player in the specimen, alongside a bright purple fluorite. And I think that seeing them together was so interesting to me, of how could that occur in nature. And it just, started getting my brain excited about asking more questions about why are minerals different colors? Why are they different shapes? And that's something that we really try and instill in people when they come to our exhibit here at the Smithsonian as well. So we think that specimens are a great way of getting people thinking about science.
Well, now, when people come and they visit the Smithsonian, do you find that they are more captivated by the colors, more captivated by the shapes, or is it evenly split?
That's a great question. I actually don't know, but I think our color case is one of the most popular Instagrammable cases out there. Sure. So we have Colors of the Rainbow case. When you first enter the exhibit and turn the corner, you'll see the full rainbow on display. And that's very captivating. But I think that once people see that and they turn and start looking at the other specimens, maybe by the time they leave, it's probably 50-50.
Very cool. Very cool. So there's a lot of nice crossover between the two at the museum.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, so your interest in minerals started early, but, when someone becomes interested in minerals, there's a fine line between that interest and when that person decides to start studying minerals as a career. Tell us about your experience in your mineral-based education and training, and what you went through.
Absolutely. So I actually started out by mining a lot. So I would go to mines.
This is beyond the credit card mining, or digging with the credit card.
Yeah, this is real mining. With actual mud. I remember at one point, I would take these road trips with my dad out west, and we would drive about 6,000 to 7,000 miles, and we'd stop at different mines along the way. And I remember one summer I was about to go out, and a girl in my class asked me what I was going to do that summer. I told her I was going to go mining. She looks at me and says, "But you're going to get dirty." And of course I was like, "Yeah, of course I'm going to get dirty. We're going to be digging in the mud a lot." So I did a lot of mining. I visited sunstone mines in Oregon, Virgin Valley, Nevada for opals. I've even actually made it up to the bonitoite mine, which was great. It's
no kidding.
Sapphire mining.
Right on.
I actually even went to the Sweet Home mine before cell phones were really a thing. And so we had an appointment, but for some reason the geologist wasn't available that day and we couldn't get a hold of him. So I went to the outside of the mine and picked through the tailings a little bit and found like a small rhodochrosite, but never actually got to go in the mine, which is really sad. Uh, so that's kind
Cool.
of how everything started, because after you start finding minerals, you're going to start finding some oddballs. You're going to start asking more questions. And so I'd actually really discovered my love for Oregon sunstones. And I was really intrigued by the pleochroism that Oregon sunstones show. And they go from red to green depending on the orientation. And so in high school, I wanted to actually study this and figure out, why does this happen? So I contacted the local mineralogist, a mineralogy professor. His name was Dr. Huifeng Zhu, and he was very brave to allow a high school student to come into his lab. But he invited me into his lab even when he was an early career scientist, which now I realize just how much work that is. And so he showed me around his lab, and we ended up actually discovering a new mineral that potentially helps, maybe causes the pleochroism from red to green. So I actually have a couple examples of what these look like. So they come in red colors, green colors, and more of the straw color. And the red and the green are due to nano inclusions of copper zero, or native copper. But when you look at them from different orientations, like the shapes of the copper platelets and potentially this protoenstatite mineral can help cause the pleochroism from green to red. So that was my first introduction to research. And I think because it was such a successful project, I decided then and there, this is what I want to do. I want to become a mineralogist someday and potentially work in museums, because I got my start in a museum.
Oh my God, I love it. Gabriella, I'm going to pull up some photos here. Tell us what we're looking at. These are like adorable little Gabriella.
Yeah, so those are some photos from when I was very young. So on the right is Chiflón del Diablo. So my family is Chilean, and that was my first mine I went into. It's actually a very deep coal mine, and you have to go down this really deep elevator, and then it goes under the sea out into the ocean. It's terrifying when you think about it. Of course, I didn't know what was happening at the time.
You grew up in the United States, but the first mine you went to was in Chile when you were visiting family?
Yes.
Wow.
So that was a very fun experience. And then when I was a little bit older, I decided I really wanted to actually find my own minerals after having been to the museum and gone to the local rock shop. And so my parents were very, very nice and took me to Crater Diamond State Park in Arkansas, where I spent 3 days in the mud, and I didn't find anything. And I still had a wonderful time. I was just grateful to be there. But afterwards, we went to Mount Ida for quartz, and that's where I actually got to find some crystals, and that changed everything for me. And for those of you who haven't been there, Mount Ida has several mines where you can actually go and do feed digging, and it's really, really fun, a great family activity as well. So that was my first real introduction to mining.
So at Mount Ida, you had found some quartz, which was the mineral that was given to you at the first museum that you visited. So it completed the loop there.
Yes, exactly. And the quartz story continues for a while.
Okay. I'm going to pull up another photograph here. This is at the Gem and Mineral Club show. And what are you doing here?
So this was my first exhibit. This was my first collection exhibit at the show. So how many young collectors will get into the industry by showing off their small collections. This was my first show. I had little boxes. I had labels for everything. I was very proud. My dad helped me a lot too at the time.
Okay, was it your father's influence, or did you somehow go to other shows and learn how to exhibit? Because I look at your exhibit here and I say, professional, top notch.
Thank you. No, my dad was very artistic, and so he helped me with making them. We had our custom mounts that we made out of foam. So
beautiful. Fantastic. And both your mother and father were biologists, right?
Correct. So I grew up in a science household, but I rebelled by becoming a geologist. But then somehow went back to the biogeochemistry side. So they got me in the end.
Way to go, rebels. Okay, so this is a little montage of a bunch of different places. You're a little bit older here. Oh my God, look at that
Yeah,
jade in the
so
bottom right. That is crazy. Where were you for that?
yeah, that was in Vancouver, and what is it? Jade West is a company. So Kirk
Okay.
Makepeace invited me to come up to his repository. And this particular jade boulder is actually quite famous. It's called the Polar Pride. So essentially, when they mine in northern British Columbia, I've never been to these mines, but they sound amazing. They basically go in helicopters and they can only take a few boulders at a time. And they can only go when there's no snow or no ice. And so it's only a few weeks out of the year, I think, that they can actually extract the boulders. And then they bring them down to southern British Columbia. And this one actually ended up becoming a Buddha. So they carved a big Buddha out of it. But I was really, really
Wow.
lucky to see it in its more rough state.
Superb. So you're not only a collector, you are a field collector, and you are not afraid to get a little bit dirty here ever since you've been a kid.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk about this. We're going back to the Oregon Sunstones, which you just shared with us there, but we've got some nice photographs for the viewers at home.
Yeah, I think the photographs really show it better than showing a hand sample over Zoom. So here you can really see that pleochroism where if you actually rotate the stone. So it's not just a light source thing, it's when you actually physically rotate the stone without cross polars, without anything, or plain polarized light. It's just as is. You see this green to red transition, which is just fascinating. And then I think the next one is the protoenstatite, which you can only find under high magnification. So yeah, so next up, I decided I wanted to really do mineralogy. And so I ended up going to Stanford for my bachelor's in geological and environmental sciences. And I wanted to explore different kinds of mineralogical research. And so I started out by working with Professor Wendy Mao, who is a high pressure mineralogist. And she is really, really amazing at what she does and really famous in the mineralogical research community. So she was also starting up her lab at the time. And she got me hooked on high pressure experiments because she showed me ice under high pressure. So she put a little water between two diamonds. So pressure is force over area. And so when we put a very small area with just a little bit of force between two diamond culettes, you can create an enormous amount of pressure that can simulate the interior of the Earth all the way down to the lower mantle. And
Wow.
So she had shown me that if you increase the pressure just a little bit, you can get different forms of ice. So ice has like 7 different forms or something. So she kept increasing it and the crystal would just morph into different shapes. It was amazing. So that's how
so ice has 7 different levels of crystallization?
Yeah, different forms of ice. So different minerals essentially, but they occur at different pressure regimes. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, so now when you go to the glaciers, you see that they are incredibly blue, and they say that's because of the pressure of the ice. Is that one of the 7, or am I like doing apples and oranges?
I don't think so, but I can't really comment on ice beyond that little anecdote. That's how she got me hooked. But after that, I ended up doing more work on carbonates from there on out.
Okay, so now you're the curatrix of the gem and minerals at the Smithsonian, but you're still at heart a researcher. And so you did some of that high pressure researching, or that high pressure research. But tell us a little bit more about what you do in terms of research, what you have done, and how you're able to kind of combine those 2 fields, being the curator and being a researcher, into your job at the Smithsonian.
Absolutely. So I mostly work in environmental biomineralogy, and that's a long way of saying that I look at minerals that are formed through biological processes. So right now I am working on coral skeletons and pearls. And so the pearls actually tie in really nicely with the gem collection. And the corals are actually a really great way for me to collaborate with other scientists at the museum. So I'll just show you actually some examples of my corals here. So this is the project I'm working on right now in my office. where I essentially am cutting up corals from all around the world. And I'm going to study how their crystal structures, so how their mineralogy changes as a function of different variables like salinity or temperature of the water. So they're pretty fun. You have basically, I cut a slice out using a jeweler's saw, and then it
sounds like we might have gotten a little bit of a hiccup here in the connection with Gabriella. We know that yesterday during our test, there was no problem at all with the Wi-Fi, but she did mention that they were having a little bit of problem today. Solar flares, I don't know what the cause is. Maybe it has to do with coral. So if we can do more analysis of the coral, maybe that'll give us some kind of perspective on it. So we're just waiting for her to come back. I believe she's going to be aware that we're not connected just because she...
I think she's going to reconnect. Yeah, she dropped out, but I think she's going to reconnect. She was in Sneak saying that the connection was bad today.
Okay.
For whatever reason, maybe the capital is too close from the government, from the Smithsonian. But anyway, stick with us, because after that, she shows us the research samples. She's going to take us to the different labs as well to see the piece of equipment, and she's back. So
looks like she's back. Here we go.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, our internet is really spotty today, so I apologize in advance if I get cut off here. So I'm going to actually walk us over to the XRD lab. Is that where we want to go next?
Sure, why not? Okay, so then talk to us about a little bit more about the coral research. So you cut into the coral and you examine the crystallography of the coral and see how it was affected due to changes in the ocean environment. How do you know what happened in the ocean to correlate it with any kind of evidence that's in the coral?
That's a great question. So for the most part, I'm just using data that's available already. So there are a lot of databases that tell us how different parts of the ocean have different salinity levels or different temperatures. A lot of monitoring programs are out there already. So I'm actually data mining all of that information and then taking corals from those locations. What we can also do is we can actually target specific corals, or in my case, I actually do this on pearls, where I actually have these cultured pearls where I know exactly when they were cultured, so when they were growing in a freshwater lake. And I happen to have all of the environmental information for that lake. And so I can do a one-to-one comparison, which is amazing. Wow. So this is very new research, because hasn't really been done before, correlating mineralogy with environmental parameters in that way.
Absolutely. So what is the growth rate of coral versus pearls? I imagine it'd be vastly different.
Oh, absolutely. So corals actually can vary quite a bit amongst different species. So when we think of shallow water corals, like the ones I showed you, sclerotidian corals, in shallow oceans grow, maybe a centimeter a year or so, less like half a centimeter a year. Whereas a pearl, one of the samples I have, it's probably about 4 millimeters across, and that represents 4 years. So maybe a millimeter a year.
Wow.
Less.
Okay. Sure.
And then there are also deep sea corals, which grow about 2 millimeters a year in these very deep ocean environments that are super, super cold, about 5,000 meters below the surface. Yeah.
And what are the main factors that affect their growth or affect the formation of the crystals in the coral? You'd mentioned salinity and temperature. Any kind of pollution, or what are some of the other things that you might be looking for?
Yeah, we're also thinking about light levels, because many shallow water corals have zooxanthellae. So there are these symbionts that essentially live in their tissues and they help them photosynthesize. So if there's coral bleaching or some kind of stress event, those zooxanthellae get expelled, and then you're left with a coral that's trying to only use its other form of energy, which is just eating, and they usually can't eat fast enough to keep up with their energetic needs. So essentially food sources, both through photosynthesis or through heterotrophic living, or light levels can affect it too. So if you have very little light, then the photosynthesis isn't going to work as well. So, okay, we have temperature, light. Ocean acidification is a big question right now. How is the acidification of the oceans going to impact the growth of coral? So that's another topic that I work in. Not currently, but I have in the past, and we'll probably come back to it soon.
I love it. I love it. I mean, we need more awareness and more research of what's going on in the ocean. It's the source of all life on the planet and very dear to my heart. So keep doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing how little work has been done in some of these fields where I'll start a research project and think, well, of course, many people have probably looked at this. And then I find that no, actually, people have not looked at this detail that I need for my bigger study. So I end up doing a lot of incremental research to help support these bigger questions. And so right now I'm actually working on some X-ray diffraction, which is pretty fun. So here's our X-ray diffraction lab. So the Smithsonian, obviously we have incredible exhibits for the public, but behind the scenes, we do a lot of scientific research. So half of my job is to do scientific research. And this is one of my primary toys. So this is the XRD, stands for X-ray diffraction. And this is a powder XRD where we can put little tiny powder samples. And I'm going to open it here for you. Okay. So here you can see, let's flip you around. So the concept is actually quite straightforward. It's not a very complicated instrument. All it does is it creates X-rays with this X-ray tube that produces monochromatic X-rays. So they're all the same energy. Then those X-rays are shot through a goniometer, through the collimator, and they hit our sample. So our sample is a very tiny capillary filled with coral powder. So aragonite, in this case, is the mineral. So we call this bioaragonite. And then the X-rays that hit the aragonite are going to diffract along all of the crystallographic planes of those crystals of aragonite. And so what happens is that the X-rays will then hit our imaging plate, which is right behind the sample. And what we end up creating is a diffraction image. So we actually can see where all of the X-rays hit the imaging plate. And so on this computer, so then we come to our computer and we can actually integrate those signals into a beautiful ring pattern. Load something here. See if this works. Well, this is just the program. We're going to upload some things for you. Yeah. This is something. Oh no, that's this is when something is more X-ray amorphous, so it doesn't have a very clean signal.
Okay.
I do a lot of work on opals as well, and you would think it wouldn't make much sense to study them this way, but it turns out you can actually still learn some stuff from it. Let's try it. I'm just opening a random. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is what a typical diffraction image would look like. So every single point on here is an X-ray that was shot off to the side by a crystallographic plane. And so we can correct our background that's due to instrument noise. And we're going to integrate all the way around. So when we integrate things, we end up with a diffraction pattern. And this pattern is indicative of what mineral is there, or sometimes minerals. So each mineral has a unique X-ray diffraction pattern. So this is what we can use to identify things. So if you give us, a really obscure mineral, we can use this and then take our database and try and match with all the obscure minerals that we know of and try and identify the mineral. But in this case, I'm taking this a step further, and I will take this pattern. This is actually calcite. So I'll take this pattern and do some more modeling to try and learn more about nuances in the crystal structure on a subatomic level. So really
interesting.
tiny changes can actually make big changes in the material properties of a mineral. So even though it seems like it's a small difference, it can actually, if it's consistent and something measurable, we can actually tell stories about it.
Okay, so a lot of people would use the XRD to identify minerals, but you take it one step further and you can break down that, basically that fingerprint identifying the mineral and identify crystallography, like variations in it. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So we're trying to measure essentially the smallest possible building block that you would need to make a crystal of aragonite. We call this a unit cell. And so doing this modeling, I can actually get at the size of that unit cell, which will be a little block. And I think of it as a tessellation. So, crystals are tessellations in a way. And so I'm looking at really small nuances in the axes sizes of those unit cells.
Interesting. So the different changes in it may relate to some of the different environmental factors that have changed the formation of it. So it's similar to the high pressure example that you saw of ice. It's all ice, but it's different variations based on external influences on it.
Yeah, the ice is a more extreme example because you're actually changing the mineral structure itself. In this case, it's still going to be an orthorhombic structure. It's just going to be a little bit longer, shorter, in a very small way. So that's one type of one instrument that we use, and that some of the information that we get. But there are other things we can add on to get even more information. And depending on the story you're trying to tell, you always have to go to different instruments and different perspectives to get the most complete story of what's happening in your system. So we're walking through the Department of Mineral Sciences. And
this is the part that people don't get to see, right? This is this is the sausage factory.
Glamorous government building, everyone. So this is where we work. And we can see, some of Elo's work on the Wittelsbach and Hope Diamond with Jeff. So these are all hanging in our quarters. And so, behind the scenes, it's no frills.
Okay, it looks like our signal might be wavering a bit.
Yeah,
so
she's in between two Wi-Fi routers. Okay.
Oh, it looks like we're back. I've got video.
Are we here? Okay.
Yes. Okay, we're with you, Gabriella.
Great. This is our Raman spectrometer. And this is another tool that many mineralogists will use for mineral identification. But again, we're going to take this a step further and learn a little bit more about, in this case, we're going to look at pearls. So also aragonite. So I'm sticking to aragonite today. But here's a map that I've made of a pearl, where this is the nucleus of the pearl. So essentially we had a pearl and we sliced it in half. And this is the Keshi pearl. So it doesn't have a bead nucleus. It was accidentally cultured because the epithelial cells that they needed for the bead to grow a classical cultured pearl fell off. And so this is just the nacre that grew around the epithelial cells. So the nucleus is quite small. It's just that really small layer right here.
A black line.
Then that black line in the middle. Yes. And so with the Raman gives us information about the structural bonding environment in our mineral. So rather than looking at the crystallographic planes, it's actually looking at vibrations in the carbonate group in this case. And so essentially it's like a little dance here. So you have like a little dance of the carbonate group where it's either going like this, or it's like rotating, or it's translating. And so here I'm going to show you, and each peak on our Raman represents a different mode. So this is a translational mode, so the moving back and forth like this. This one is a librational mode, so it's kind of like a seesaw, it kind of tilts. And so if we look at this ratio of this peak to this peak, it kind of gives us some information about how those bonding environments are changing across the growth history of this pearl. And so this one's perhaps not the greatest example, but we can see that there are some nuances in the beginning stage of the growth. And in the middle here, there's like a band where the ratio has shifted. So essentially, there's a lot of data that we can mine out of these Raman spectra.
And so those bonding shifts, again, are due to environmental factors?
They can be, yes. And
okay,
in this case, we're not entirely sure, but they do seem to correlate with certain environmental parameters. So in particular, like alkalinity is one that seems to correlate. Correlation, again, is not causation, so we're not really sure yet. But I'd have to look. I have this like monster plot with all of my different correlations and all of the transects put together, and I can show you some over here if we come back out. So I have
now, do some of these external factors basically have fingerprints, or have you been able to identify common changes that happen every time you see this change in external influences?
This is very new work, so
it's exciting.
So, but here's kind of an example we can do. So these are some of those Raman maps, and then here's the environmental data. And so we can start to kind of align everything, right, in a more meaningful way. Yeah, so you're looking at it there a little bit more closely.
Yeah, I brought up on my computer, I've got an image that looks very much like the poster you just brought up. There we go.
Exactly. Yeah. So here's exactly what I was showing you. So there are many different tools we can use to map things. And if we put them all together, we can get more information about the heterogeneity across this pearl as it grew in a freshwater lake. And so it's really exciting. And my first paper came out a couple of years ago, but this paper, this newest data, will be coming out soon in GCA, which is a journal, Geochimica, Cosmochimica Acta. And so keep an eye out for that. I always try to publish open access as much as I can. It's very expensive, but we do our best. So keep an eye out for that if you want to learn more about pearls growing in freshwater environments. So
that is fascinating. That is incredible. Now, that's the research that you do at the Smithsonian. Is there more that you do? And are there other areas of research that are done at the Smithsonian?
Absolutely. So I'm going to take you into another lab now. This is our Scanning Electron Microscopy Lab, or SEM lab. And we'll see. I think some people are working here right now. Sorry, this is going through. Say hi to Tim.
Hello, Tim. How are you doing?
Eloise says hi. So here's Tim Gooding, our guru when it comes to scanning electron microscopy. So I'm going to show them the new instrument too. I got it. Thank you. So that's our old SEM, but we just were gifted a new SEM that is kind of the pride and joy at the moment. So this is an instrument that I have not gotten to use yet because it's so new that our lab technicians are still learning how to use it and doing trainings. And the whole reason why we got this is that in fall of 2023, so this fall, we are going to have a sample return mission from the asteroid Bennu, which is photographed here.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
My colleague, Tim McCoy, has been on this OSIRIS-REx mission with NASA for many years, and the samples are coming back to Earth after they collected the samples, I think it was a year ago, And so we're going to be some of the first people, well, not me, but my colleagues will be the first ones to actually measure the organic contents from the regolith, or the loose soil on the surface of this asteroid, which is amazing. And so they're not going to let me play with this, because I work on organic biominerals. So we don't want to contaminate the instrument before they've done those measurements, of course. So I'm going to be very patient and like wait years and years before I get to play with this. But it's so exciting that we have, such amazing instruments that are available to us. And I'm going to show you one other place where Tim Gooding actually will help us manufacture our samples, not manufacture the samples themselves, but actually mount them properly so that we can put them in all of these different types of instruments. So I'm going to go down the hall. We have a wet chemistry lab in here. Yeah, this is the view that normally people don't get to see.
This is amazing, because it's a whole perspective of the Smithsonian that most of us don't understand. We know what you have on exhibit, and we'll get to that probably after this. But to know a lot more information about the research that you guys are doing, or the capacity that you have for research, is absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So I just showed you the piston cylinder, so high pressure experiments. And this is what we call the Ministry of Fabrication. And it is a messy, messy place where Tim Gooding helps us make things. And so does Rob Wardell and Tim Rose. So all of the epoxies and polishing wheels and things you would need to prepare samples to put in the SEM or the microprobe, or all of the different instruments that we use here. So yeah, it's an incredible place to be. It's the big reason why I took the job here as well, because it combines both of my passions for collections, but then of course for research. So it's a wonderful place to be. And I know Elo has had a lot of experience working here as a postdoc back in the day as well. So
absolutely. Well, talk to us about some of the responsibilities you have as the curatrix of the National Gem and Mineral Collection.
Yeah, so I'm very lucky in that I work with a big team. And so our jobs are to be stewards for the National Gem and Mineral Collection and to help grow the National Gem and Mineral Collection. And so every year we go to Tucson and we find new things that are missing from our collection or that we can upgrade with the collection. And we're constantly, looking for potential gifts to the collection. So every single specimen in the National Gem and Mineral Collection is through a gift, whether it be an endowment or the specimen itself, or even just a monetary gift for us to buy a specific mineral. So not a single taxpayer dollar goes into buying mineral specimens, which I think is really important to emphasize. So everything we do is thanks to that generosity and thanks to many of you who have donated things to our collection. It's really, really important to preserve these materials well into the future. And one thing that I really like about being a research curator is that we're always thinking about what is the research going to be like, 100 years from now, 500 years from now.
Right.
So just because I can measure something on the XRD today, I bet you that in 500 years, they're going to have a new instrument and they'll know things that we don't know today. And so our job is to preserve these materials so that they will be available hundreds, thousands of years from now. And so, I'm always looking, like the whole team and I are always looking for things that can help fill those gaps in the collection, especially, or if a researcher comes to us and says, I really need to study X mineral. And oops, we only have one example of that. Okay, we start scouting and figuring out, are there more examples we can get? Where can we get some more so we can help that researcher? So that is our mission. And I did bring some goodies if you want to see some of the newest things that we have to show.
Of course we do.
Okay. So one of the big things that we got this year is a collection of gemstone butterflies that happen to feature minerals from the United States. So
Now, was this the collection that was on exhibit at the TGMS show this year?
Yes, we did bring it.
All right.
We're very, very lucky to show it there. But I thought I would feature a couple of them because we kind of touched on some of the American gemstones at the beginning, and some of them are very near and dear to my heart. I mentioned.
I know why, because you hinted at it earlier in the program, I believe.
Yeah, so here's a butterfly featuring Yogo sapphires. So here's one. So these are beautiful Yogos, and there's actually the top one is actually a violet Yogo sapphire, which most people probably didn't notice. Eventually, we'll get some photographs of these done and put on the website.
And you had mentioned when you were a kid, you had visited the Yogo Gulch area of Montana up by Utica.
Yeah. It was really special. So this is one that Mike Wise really loves too. This is the largest faceted hiddenite from North Carolina.
Nice.
So they're absolutely beautiful. And it's fun. These butterflies are also articulated, so they're very delicate.
So that movement is by design.
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. I was watching it move and I was like, oh, should she be touching it like that? But you know what you're doing. I have no idea.
I do have some Virgin Valley opals. So typically speaking, Virgin Valley opals are very water rich.
Wow.
We know the formula for opal is SiO2 times NH2O. And that N is the percentage of water that's in the structure, or not in the structure, but in the mineraloid. And so in this case, usually Virgin Valley opals will dry up and they craze. So they crack their color. But in this case, here are some stable Virgin Valley opals. And they're always, well, I shouldn't say always because I don't really know, but I would say most of the time they are actually opalized wood or opalized organic materials of some kind, which is also.
Well, I'm sure Eloise wouldn't mind that if you send it to her as a gift.
Yeah, opal CT too. It's interesting. It's not opal A. These are spessartines from the Little 3 mine. So I've never been to this mine, but I would love to go if it's still open. I don't even know. San Diego.
Yeah, we got to get you to visit a few of the mines down here in San Diego. Down here, I'm not even in California anymore. What am I talking about?
So this is one mine I did get to visit via the BLM side. Is the Benitoite mine.
Benitoite mine.
So
this is the California State Gemstone.
Yeah, this is probably the most spectacular example of Benitoite in jewelry. And the reason for this is that Buzz Gray and Bernadine Gray, who designed this, they were the owners of the mine. And so they were able to collect all of the colors that are featured in here. So it's actually a gradation from light colored benitoite all the way to the darker colors. And they put so much time and effort in designing this and getting all of the colors just right. So you could probably never recreate something like this, without their help at least.
That is super. I can't wait to see a high resolution photograph of that. And you had that on display, and I know that we filmed it for What's Hot in Tucson, but I'd love to be able to really examine all the variations of color there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely spectacular. It really, really sparkles as well, which doesn't hurt. Mm-hmm. And this is just a fun one I wanted to add in because these are natural pearls from Baja California. And so I actually had used some Baja California pearl material in one of my pearl studies and coral studies. And so I thought this was a beautiful example of naturally occurring Baja pearls. And they actually do fluoresce bright red under UV, which is interesting.
No, super.
Yeah. And then I brought one other treat to show you guys. So when I first arrived at the Smithsonian, I had the pleasure of being a little bit of a part of a big donation that we got, a big gift from Bruce Stewart in 2019. And I did actually get to wear this at the time, but this is the Kimberly diamond necklace.
My Lord.
55.08 carats from South Africa. And it is a beautiful baguette diamond that is essentially flawless. So you wouldn't cut a diamond like this unless it was so flawless that, the inclusions wouldn't show. So beautiful, beautiful stone. But it's currently off exhibit.
It's currently off exhibit, you say?
Yeah, which is why I can show it to you. But we're getting it back on exhibit very soon. But,
oh my God, my jaw is on the ground.
So, and this was featured in a couple of TV shows. It Takes the Thief and Ironsides, which makes it extra fun. And we're hoping to put it. So Russ and I talked about this, and Russ thought it would be really nice to put it next to the Victoria Transvaal necklace, since these diamonds were actually featured together at one point in time. And so having them reunited on exhibit would be quite magical. And that kind of brings me to, just as a last PSA, to remind you all that, we are a team here at the Smithsonian. And so we have a big group, actually, that I get to work with. So I'm one of the curators. And I think I have a photograph, Brian,
of your entire team. Yes.
There we go. I just wanted to take this moment to introduce our team. So I'm Gabriela Farfan. I'm one of the curators. Our other curator is Johan Laskew, and is also curator of gems and minerals. And we get to work with our collection managers, who have each been around for 40 plus years now. So Russell Feather, who many of you know, is the collection manager of gems. Paul Powat is our collection manager of minerals. Mike Wise is our amazing mineralogist who does pegmatite deposits. And then Christine Webb has been a contractor in the gem side of things for a very long time. We're going to be keeping her on as well for a while. And our newest member of our team is Greg Pauley, who is a collection specialist. So he's just starting to learn about the mineral world. So please, we encourage you all to welcome him next time you meet him in Tucson. And we're all very, very excited to work with the community in preserving these incredible, incredible minerals and gemstones that the earth gets to make for us. And so just think of us next time you see something spectacular, even if it's just to show us something interesting. We're excited to learn. We're excited to see what's out there. And we're looking forward to meeting you all in Tucson this year, and potentially in Denver as well.
Gabriella, I want to add that this is your team, but it is also our team collectively, because this is the National Museum. So I consider all of these people working for all of us in the mineral collecting community. So don't be shy. If you see any of these people, don't be shy just going up and introducing yourself and thanking them for the service that they do, because without the work that the Smithsonian is doing, especially in terms of the collection management and the research, and their perspective of collecting and preserving with the perspective of future research, it's really, it's a national treasure. The museum is, and all the people that work for it.
Yeah, it's such an honor to be here, and we're very excited to get to come to work every day working with these minerals and gems. And we hope that you all feel the same way about the minerals and gems that you might be working with as well. So.
Absolutely. Well, Gabriella, you have an incredible job at a absolutely fantastic, top-notch institution. I'm going to ask Raquel to launch the poll as I have you address my next, and Gabriella, you can just go ahead and close that window. But okay. I would love you to speak about being a role model, being an example for other young people out there that are getting into the science. You are very strongly science-based. You split from your parents who were science-based but biologists, and you went into geology. In, I think it was 2010, First Lady Michelle Obama invited you to attend the State of the Union address that President Barack Obama was doing. And you were invited there as a young female Latino-based or Latino blooded person. Speak to me about those three elements and the challenges you faced and the encouragement that you can give other people out there. You were young, you're female, and you were in a minority population here in the United States. And you overcame all of that. And perhaps because of it, it inspired you to work even harder to accomplish your goal.
So no, it's been a really interesting journey. And I think that, you know, I've been able to really embrace all of the parts of who I am, right? So being Chilean, I think, is part of what got me into geology as well, considering it's a very mining driven country. And there's a lot of copper mining, and that was a part of my family for a very long time. So I think that, you know, all of what makes you who you are, embrace it. It's really important. For me, like, I guess being a woman in science definitely has its challenges. I'm not going to lie about that.
Certainly, yeah.
But I think, you know, I knew what I wanted to do, and I just kept going. And that's really important to just remember to always keep going if it's something that you want. And no one else can tell you that you can't do something. I've had a lot of, not too many, but sometimes people will tell me things that it's like, oh, you can't do that. And I chose to actively ignore that. And if I listened to them, I would not be where I am today. So listen to the people who are encouraging you. Don't listen to the people who don't. Simple as that.
And believe in yourself. I mean, one thing that really moved me was a quote that you had done back when you were taking a chemistry class, where you saw a lot of other Latinas dropping out because it was so difficult. And it inspired you to work even harder to succeed in chemistry, which furthered your career.
Yeah, I also had a goal in mind that really helped, because I knew I wanted to be here at the Smithsonian. And so even though at first chemistry was hard for me, and then I just decided, you know what, it doesn't matter. I'll keep doing it anyway, or I'll do it again. And I ended up deciding to do a PhD in geochemistry because I felt like my chemistry wasn't strong enough at the time. And so now I feel great about chemistry. We're good friends.
You played your weakness.
I did, really. So if you ever have a chance to do that, I'll tell you, it's very painful. Starting from scratch in a new field. So I actually did a marine chemistry program at MIT in the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Long mouthful. But it was a wonderful experience because it really did train me in geochemistry and in marine science. And so now I'm able to combine those two things in a much more powerful way. And the other thing I also wanted to mention that there are so many amazing mentors, especially in the mineral community. So I wouldn't be where I am today without all of the people that encouraged me and all of those mentors, all of those professors that took me on for research projects, all of the lapidary folks that I was part of the Madison Gem and Mineral Club. They were all like my uncles and aunts that took care of me for many, many years. And so all of you who are encouraging younger students or younger people to get into this hobby, you are doing that work. That's really important work. So continue to encourage young people to get into this hobby, to become professional mineralogists. Anything you can do to help, that's very, very appreciated. And I know that I always thank my mentors. I know I saw that Barb Dutro's there, so there are a lot of mentors along the way. And also Raquel, she hired me on early on as well. So yeah.
Well, fantastic. Kudos to you, really. Congratulations. One final question, which, we're going off script here and we're going a little bit over time, but when were you first introduced to the Smithsonian, and when did you decide that's where you wanted to work?
So I actually went to the Smithsonian for the first time when I was 16. It was fall before school started. My mom and I took a mother-daughter trip to DC, And I wanted to see the Hope Diamond. I wanted to see the Gems and Minerals. And so I actually emailed Jeff Post and asked him if I could potentially meet him as the curator in charge at the time. And because I'm also from Wisconsin, I think that was a green flag for him. And he invited me to come behind the scenes. And so I actually spent like an hour with him in the Blue Room, in the vault. He was very, very generous with his time. And by the end of it, I think he realized just how much I love minerals. And he kind of joked. He's like, well, you never know. Like maybe someday you'll come work here too with me. And I took that very seriously. And, you know, I know that he was joking. I was like, no, actually, this sounds like the perfect place for me. I like this idea.
I love it. I love it. It's a true story of dreams coming to reality. All right, Gabriella, that is the end of our official interview, but now we're going to have a little bit of fun. We are going to do the Quick Fire 5 segment of this program. And in case you're not familiar with it, I've got 5 questions I'm going to ask you. Each question has 2 answers. All of your answers are correct. What I'm looking for is your quickest response to which answer resonates with you the strongest. Now, the viewers have already answered all these questions, so we're going to see how well they predict how you're going to answer. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay, are you ready?
Ready.
Here we go. Question number 1. Your favorite almost mineral, coral or opal?
Opal.
Opal. Ooh, there's very little hesitation on that answer. Question number 2. Favorite work environment, on a boat studying coral or in a mine studying minerals?
In a mine studying minerals.
Ooh.
I've been on many research cruises. They're fun, but not quite my jam.
Yeah, well, you like to get dirty. We've seen photos of that. Favorite drink in Tucson, a margarita or white wine?
Ooh, that's hard. I think in Tucson, margarita.
In Tucson, it's a margarita. Potentially elsewhere, it'd be white wine. Okay. Question number 4. Favorite language, French or Spanish? And keep in mind, before you answer, we have one of each who are co-hosts of this show. So choose carefully.
Tengo que decir español, obvio.
Okay.
But I also love French.
Yeah, fantastic.
I love trying to speak French with Eloise.
Final question. This might be the really tough one. Favorite Chilean poet, Pablo Neruda or Gabriela Mistral?
Well, I am named after Gabriela Mistral, so I'm going to have to say Gabriela.
That is the answer I predicted. Okay. Eloise, are you ready with the viewers' answers?
Yes. Raquel, do you want to do it? Yeah, we can do it. Let's do it. Let's do it together.
Okay.
Raquel is ready.
Okay. Question number 1, favorite almost mineral, coral or opal? Gabriella went with opal without hesitation. What did our viewers say?
No, they were wrong. It was coral.
They went with coral.
I also love coral. That's a hard one. That was hard.
Okay, question number 2, favorite work environment, on a boat studying coral or in a mine studying minerals? Gabriella said, I like getting dirty in the mine. What did our viewers say?
People know that she likes to get dirty in the mine.
In the mine. Ching, ching. Favorite drink, margarita. Favorite drink in Tucson. Sorry, let me clarify. Margarita or white wine? Gabriella went with the margarita. What did our viewers say?
The viewer says that they know what they have to offer Gabriella when they're in Tucson and talk about some awesome minerals they want to share. It's got to be around a margarita in Tucson. Yes.
By being around a margarita. Fantastic. Favorite language, Francais or Espanol? Gabriella went with Espanol. What did our viewers say?
I'm gonna let Raquel answer that question.
Raquel doesn't have her mic on, but I see her laughing.
Es obvio, español. Sorry, Ella.
Oh, lovely.
Sí.
And the final question, favorite Chilean poet, Neruda or Mistral? Gabriela, who was obviously named after Gabriela Mistral, went with Mistral. What did our viewers say?
Gabriela Mistral indeed as well. Yes.
They got that. That's great. Okay. 4 out of 5. Fantastic. Well, Gabriella, if you have some time, we're into our Q&A section right now where Raquel and Eloise are going to look at some of the comments in the chat and some of the comments in the Q&A section and see if there are questions that our viewers have.
Okay, Raquel, can you look through the maybe in the chat, and I will begin with the Q&A. A question from Barbara. What causes the flame structure in conch or giant clam pearls? Is that still aragonites and the mollusk spits?
Okay, so I don't know what causes the flame structures. I think there has been some research done on that, but I am not up to date myself on it.
I think that would be a good question for George Russman that is in the chat. So maybe, George, if you want to comment on that, on the flame structure of conch or pearls, that would be a good opportunity.
They are calcite, though, I'm pretty sure. They're not aragonitic.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next question, I'm trying to translate to get that right from Dick's data. He has collected fossil coral and is asking what causes agates, silica, to be found in basically calcium carbonate coral.
So that would be a replacement situation where the coral itself was aragonite, but then if you have silica-rich fluids that came through, it can replace the carbonate. And so now it then becomes agatized, much like, fossilized wood or agatized wood. So it's the same situation. So okay, Florida has a lot of those. Yeah.
Makes sense. Someone asked, do inclusions causing the schiller in sunstone occur along the cleavage plane or in a orientation?
Oh, I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've looked at the orientations. I think they're definitely along several different directions, but I believe that there's one orientation, I'd have to look at the paper, where the larger schiller occurs. So I think the nano ones can kind of occur in different orientations, but the schiller is usually oriented. You're right. Mm-hmm. I don't remember in which direction though. I think it was 001.
Again, if George is still here, I'm sure he can maybe help with that question. Peter Lickberg has a question. What is your favorite mine?
What is my favorite mine? I don't know if I can have a favorite mine.
You could say Tourmaline Queen Mine. That's fine.
I've never been there. I would love to go.
Okay, we'll take you there.
That would be great. I really love the Dust Devil Mine in Oregon. Obviously, I spent many, many years going there. And then I also really love the Rainbow Ridge Mine for Virgin Valley opals. That was a really, really fun experience as well. They actually give you a big load of mud and they just leave the mud. So you pay for a bunch of mud. That's kind of fun. They most recently went to the Havey Quarry, and that was a really fun experience because I'd never been to a pegmatite deposit before. So that was really lovely. As we were walking into the mine, or into the quarry, there was a lot of mica, muscovite on the ground, and it was just glittering. So it felt like a little glittering pathway. I went to with Raquel to that one. That was really
nice.
Fun. Yeah.
Well, that was all in the Q&A section. So I'm not gonna turn to back to Raquel. Just a quick comment on you, Gabriela, because we talk about your research, about the curation part. You are someone who loves to share the science, to share knowledge. You are really good at outreach. You do a lot of programs at the Smithsonian as well, doing outreach for all kinds of publics, from young kids to adults as well. So I wanted to emphasize that, and this will of sharing your knowledge. I know that you had a lot of good people helping you when you were young, and now you're doing the same for others. So thank you for thank you about that. It's really important. Thank you for this service. The Smithsonian is really lucky to have you.
Well, thank you, Elo. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I love doing outreach, and that was a big thing that pulled me to the Smithsonian as opposed to a professorship somewhere, because I love the idea of being able to talk to kids, especially about minerals, and I love their enthusiasm. They're always so excited when you tell them anything about minerals. And so I love that reaction that I get from them. Yeah.
Gabriella, we have few comments. I mean, I will share with you the comments after today, but the one that struck to me the most is the last one by Barb Dutroff. She wrote, thank you, Gabriella. Fantastic and inspirational to hear of your journey. Follow your dream is a super advice.
Oh.
And that has been many of the comments throughout. She has summarized a lot of the comments throughout the chat. So everyone congratulates you on your new job. And then George mentioned he also hasn't studied that, Elo. So no one seems to know that answer to the flames. And then few questions we got in here. Is it true that the only perfectly straight line in nature are in crystals in the inorganic world?
I don't know. I've never thought about that, but it would make sense, right? Crystals.
I don't know. Elo and I are with the same face. Like a straight line is a straight line. In crystal structure, I mean, it's a pattern, but I'm not sure I get that. How many cleavages planes are there in a sandstone?
Well, there's definitely one very strong cleavage, probably two, I would guess. Again, I'd have to look at this literature. It's been a long time. For the record, it's been a long time since I've worked on labradorite. So.
Gabriella, what is a rainbow moonstone?
Rainbow moonstone is different than Oregon sunstone. So you have more of a structural effect, essentially, rather than an inclusion effect that's causing the moonstone effect. Yeah.
Does it become could you have it on the same color as a sandstone? Not really, no?
It depends. I don't think so, though, right? Because moonstones are usually blue. You can get rainbow moonstones, though, that have the full spectrum of colors. It probably depends on essentially what wavelength of light you can create, right? So, but blue is probably the easiest, I'm assuming, because that's what we see in nature the most. Whereas in sunstones, it's a schiller. The schiller is actually the plates of copper. So you're literally looking at copper plates shining the light back at you. So it's a very different process.
Very good. I remember this is an anecdote. You and I, we were looking at some of the sandstone from Christ.
Yeah.
Amazing color. Also with Elo. That was a fun twosome.
Yeah.
One more question. Does the tessellation also oscillate?
So the tessellation is just a word I use to describe the unit cell if you were to repeat it over and over again, because the unit cell is the smallest building block. I think of them like Legos. So if you put the Legos next to each other, you can build a big crystal. I don't know what you mean by oscillate. Maybe with the Raman, that's a separate thing. We're thinking about the actual bonds between the atoms that would make up our unit cell. So essentially going into the unit cell, looking at only the carbonate group and seeing how they stretch or how they change. So those would be oscillations between the stretching modes.
Okay. Sonia cries, yeah. I think that's it, unless you see anything else, Elo.
No, I think we covered everything. It was a lot of comments and people were super happy to see the labs as well, to walk through the corridors. That was really fun. Thank you for showing that, because, it's not something that people get to see. So thanks. And thanks to all the people at the Smithsonian as well that we saw walking by. It was nice. Yeah. Thank you very much, Gabriella, for your time. It was awesome. And again, as Brian was saying, it's a good opportunity now to those people who didn't know you yet to stop you at shows and the corridors or at the Smithsonian while walking in the exhibit and talk to you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, please come say hi in Tucson or wherever you see us. We're really excited to meet you all. And thank you all so much for doing this. I really enjoy Mineral Talks Live. So thank you for inviting me, Brian, Elo, and Raquel.
Well, Gabriella, thank you for being on. For all the viewers out there, remember, Gabriella's drink of choice is a margarita. So just have one ready, walk up with her and start chatting to her. And I think one of the great messages here is to all the young up and coming mineral people, chase your dreams, do what Gabriella did. And so when it gets hard, you double down and you keep going. So Gabriella, thank you again for that. It was an incredible interview. We had a great time. For all you viewers out there, come on back. July 5th will be our next episode of Mineral Talks Live. We'll see you then. Take care. Aloha.